Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome to the Friday edition.
Well, we're going to go right ahead and take you through some of the dailies today. And we'll start with Vanguard newspaper. And it turns out it's still almost the same subject matter. Security or lack of it. So that's what you see here this morning. And look at that. Gunmen abduct Abia varsity students. Number unknown. So is this a free-for-all? Why do we have these things constantly playing themselves out? Is it a script? Who's doing these things? Who's behind it? What are we doing to ensure these things stop happening? Look at the riders. Perhaps it could help. 2 policemen killed. Station burnt down in Anambra. Another police station attacked in Ebonyi. Policeman killed. DPO's office, admin building set ablaze. So you just keep wondering, what next at the end of the day? What are the people supposed to do? And these kind of things keep happening.
I'm completely at a loss, Chamberlain. I don't know.
Well, the authorities should not be at a loss because they're the ones saddled with that responsibility to protect lives and property. So if this were the case, perhaps I might just go ahead and fortunately have to just find out what is going on.
A good choice of word there. Should not.
Should they?
They shouldn't be, but aren't they?
They don't have a choice.
Since 2009.
That they were elected? Oh, okay.
Government after government after government. I mean, you heard the governor of Ebonyi State yesterday say that, whatever it is that we're going through now, according to him, it's as a result of the failure of past leaders doing what they needed to do.
So what about present leaders?
Exactly. So what are the present leaders supposed to do? What are the constitutional or legal frameworks that have hampered or hindered, us from doing things that would have helped us to prevent this? And something critical that he said in that interview yesterday, he said, we didn't do what we needed to do to protect the youth of today many years ago. Are we doing anything to protect the youths of the future today?
Well. So, and then you see drama as APC, PDP reps clash over defection. That also features just above this lead story here. And, many are just looking to the Electoral Act, if they were to amend it. Should there be a clause in there that just says, no, stick with that political party of yours? Even though it's already there, but they just keep wondering, should it be made a little stiffer to stop people from, hopping from one political party to the other just to achieve what some describe as their selfish ambitions?
Should I take that from
the people?
Should I take that from another perspective completely? RMFC recently said, what Makwa calls Ramfak, recently said that they needed to review the salaries of political office holders. I wish it would be a downward review that will make the offices not worth fighting or killing for.
If wishes were horses.
If only wishes were horses.
I was detained because of Nnamdi Kanu that subscribed to Mbaka, just beneath that one. Insecurity, name-same linkage will help us track crooks. Buhari adds it will cover our security structure, help identify crooks, determine success of war against insecurity, no space agency DG, no adequate satellite to monitor bandits, says National Space Agency DG. Satellite engineers disagree.
Oh, really? But that's the fellow in charge of the...
But the engineers are saying, no, we disagree.
Engineers working in the agency or outside of it. Anyway, the details on the inside pages, I guess.
Need I say more? Well, again, the Mr. and Mrs. is right there for you to see, so that, yeah, I know it's a Friday.
I'm going to have to protest.
Yeah, no problem. You have a right to protest. There's freedom of protest in this part of the world. So you can. Well, look at Vanguard Sports. That's what you see on the back page. Super Eagles start World Cup qualifiers in September. 16 athletes jet out to USA for relay qualifiers. So that much you can find on the back page of Vanguard today.
Well, the Daily Trust newspaper is looking at the news from the same lead as the Vanguard newspaper this morning. This time, first line is IPOB. 4 cops killed, police stations burnt in Anambra, Ebonyi. Suspects freed, arms stolen, varsity students kidnapped in Abia, couple in Ogun. Southeast now a killing field. That one is in parentheses, find out who said it. Bandits kill 7 in Niger village. All of that story you'll find on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Right under the nameplate, FG, heavy flooding looms in FCT, Kano, Lagos, and 25 others. Well, this is not unknown to us. We've heard this before. Let's just hope we can take preemptive action. And right beside that one, Buhari suspends NPAMD, Hadiza Bala Usman, directs probe. Find out the details on the inside pages. Same link, same linkage story also right there on the front page. Migrant herders transiting Kaduna, Niger, not bandits. Well, that's ascribed to government. The story is on page 7. Find out who said that.
Take a look at Blueprint next. Amid service chiefs' assurances, gunmen kill 2 police inspectors, abduct Abia varsity students. That's what you find right there on the front page of Blueprint newspaper here today. And then the writers, if you could take a look at them, they might be of some help here. Negotiations ongoing for release of Greenfield students. Abducted Kogi Council boss regains freedom. Senate restates need for supplementary budget. South Korea ready to assist Nigeria. I subscribe to the envoy. And you know that certain Western countries at that time had indicated interest to provide intelligence. And so you just wonder, what happened? How did that go cold? So what's with that one now? You just wonder, isn't it? So that is the big one there. And then, yeah, you've seen some of the other headlines previously, but above that lead story, you see Nigeria's unity should not be compromised, Shimbacho. So that also featuring on the front page here today. So that is Blueprints today.
The Nigerian News Direct has this one. Presidency probes NPA, suspends Hadiza Bala Usman as MD. That's the lead of the paper, appoints Kolo acting MD. Find the story on page 2. And right above the nameplate, a number of stories right there. Death of Pastor Adeboye's son, we're shaken but confident, says RCCG. NCC warns telecom consumers on dangers of pre-registered SIM cards. I'm wondering what that means, really. Because, I mean, you just come into the country, you secure a SIM, and you get the number from any of the telcos, you make a call, and Truecaller tells someone else the name of the person that is calling. So most of the SIMs have been pre-used. Exactly. For those who use Truecaller, thank you. And so most of those numbers may have been used previously by some people that were deregistered from that line by the telecom service provider. So how does the person who just got a brand new SIM know? So that that they are pre-registered. NCC is warning telecom subscribers or telecom consumers on dangers of pre-registered SIM cards. But how would you know? The number given to you was opened right in front of you by your telecom subscriber, your telecom service provider. So how do you know? Well, maybe there is more to the story, but then you can find the details on page 3 of the paper this morning. Well, that's the news direct today.
Akwe?
Well, good morning, gentlemen. And yeah, I think Abuja people repented. They begged me to come back. So I'm back here. But what you see on the front page of the paper I'm about to review now, it's not very pretty. It's a sad one there. Last moments of Dare Adeboye as shock, disbelief trail his death. Yes, the GO of the RCCG, the Redeemed Christian Church of God, lost his son. You see a number of stories at the bottom there. He was hale and hearty, says Redeemed Church, rules out COVID-19 as cause of death. Buhari, Jonathan, governors, others mourn. The story is on page 4 of the paper. They have a number of other stories there at the bottom there. Terror threats. We will work with military to secure FCT. That's according to the minister. It's a page 7 read. Yes, the minister of the FCT is saying they will work with the military to secure the city. Look at this one. CBN vows to resist maize importation. It's a page 7 read. Why do they have to vow? You might want to read the details inside the paper. Nigeria's industrialization drive suffers major setback. And they also have this story. Hadiza Bala Usman suspended as MPA MD. Perhaps some politics, perhaps some investigation. You might want to read details on page 7 of Leadership Friday.
So Abuja, oh dear, as gale of insecurity is spread across states, parents withdraw wards from schools in Abuja over kidnap scare. Schools remain safe, police insist. Bandits use walkie-talkie. No more GSM, says Nasdra boss. Kidnappers abduct varsity students in Abia, dozens in Niger. Gunmen attack police stations in Ebonyi, Anambra, kill 3 cops. Reps move to investigate 2 billion naira safe school intervention project. Ondo warns monarchs against harboring strangers. So, what does that do now to this call by the president saying NIN SIM linkage will help us track crooks? So, don't use SIM, NIN.
You know, what even scared me a little on that one is, I mean, walkie-talkies, you choose channels, you choose frequencies. So, will we be able to track their own frequency on the walkie-talkies? Do we know the kind of walkie-talkies they're using? Will they be able or not to track the walkie-talkies of our own security personnel? You know, all these things are, you know, quite interesting. You just choose. I mean, this is just a matter of choosing channels. If we're on a band that they can get us, it makes our security apparatus also vulnerable to them. Now, I've also seen, you know, this NIN SIM thing. I mean, you may have seen those videos as well of people from wherever also having, you know, the NIN certificate with them, carrying it all over the place, and they themselves know that they're
the NIN certificates.
Yes. I mean, so, I mean, I don't know. It's a long, long haul that we are in. I just hope that we'll be able to do the needful.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting one. Who knows? What role can NCC play in this one now?
Oh, really?
By the way, when they won consumers on that, what you got a pre-registered SIM,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Well, I don't think it's that the telecom companies register them and sell them to people.
No, it's not that they registered them. You know, if you haven't used your SIM for a number of months.
After having registered it?
After having registered it. After having previously registered it, you are deregistered, so to speak. But the records is not lost in the universe. For those who use Truecaller, as we said, and other, who can easily register.
Yeah, I get that, but if they're warning consumers, it suggests that it's something that consumers do, not the telcos. Because, for instance, if people sell pre-registered SIM, on the streets. They
Really?
hawk them. Oh yeah, come on. They hawk them a lot. And so if you go out there, probably, you know, you just want to do a quick one and you just buy all of those. They've completed all the processes for you. They just sell it to you. You just pick and move. Perhaps that's what the danger is, because I've seen that.
Well, if that happens, sincerely, I'm aghast. You know, but
No,
if that
I've
really
seen that.
does happen,
Yeah.
it's one thing. But a friend of mine, I mean, you know a number of people who will just come from abroad, just go to a telco to get a SIM card, and when they call you, a lady...
No, that's different. If it's a telcos, of course, they'll clean it up. But this happens to be with individuals who and hawkers who already sell pre-registered SIM because maybe they come from abroad and they're in a hurry to get certain things done. You quickly get it, and then it's good to go. Maybe that's what the caution.
But the danger then, if you can know, it means that the authorities are aware. What are we doing about that? Picking up these people to ensure that they don't, you know, make other people vulnerable.
People who hawk them on the streets?
Yep.
Well, who knows? And then you see this other story at the bottom of the paper, Guardian here. Cautious optimism as contractor takes over Port Harcourt refinery for $1.5 billion rehab. That's the Guardian this morning.
Well, if you take a look at the Daily Times newspaper, this is what you will find on the front page. 4 policemen slain as security chiefs, others meet Senate, pledge to end growing anarchy. Question we want to ask ourselves is, look, we know what the problem is. What's the root cause? We are fighting what we are supposed to prevent.
Well, President of the Senate says they will give them, they will allocate more funds.
To security operators. That's the thing, Chamberlain. We are fighting it. Are we, as we are fighting insecurity
throwing
now,
money at it.
yes, are we preventing it from happening in the future?
Remember, Senator Dema says that, what was that talk again about them not seeing soldiers on the front lines with new AK-47 rifles in spite of the huge resources that's gone there. So questions are, what's going on?
Where's the $1 billion? What are the things that we bought? We can understand all of the English words that are printed on the pages of papers as a result of press releases from government, but then people are dying. People are living in fear incrementally, and that's definitely something that should give us a lot of concern. Right above the name plate, you see also name-SIM linkage important for peace and stability, says the president, and a number of other stories right there on the front page of the Daily Times. Markwe?
Well, let's look in New Telegraph for you, and you'll see the story. Students' abductions, bandits targeting governments. That's according to Sheikh Gumi. Says they're working to secure release of Greenfield varsity students. Don't forget that Greenfield varsity students, 5 of them have already been murdered by these bandits, or should we say killers more appropriately. Panic as gunmen abduct ABSU scholars. That's also on the front page. Incident devastating. Evil. Kalu. Well, you know, we rejoice over the release of one set. We saw the release of the Africa students, and you know, we're still in the euphoria of that. And then we hear that another set have been kidnapped, and we don't even know the numbers just yet. Pages 3, 7, and 27 will give you details. You have a number of other stories just beneath the nameplate here. The story you guys had already spoken of earlier, linking SIM to NIN will enhance security, aid planning. That's according to President Buhari. Now, the fact that, I think it's very important to know that the fact that a number already comes out identified on Truecaller doesn't mean that it's been pre-registered. I think that's just something that the app recognizes this number. It belonged to this person before now. Well, that registration, I don't know if it's been wiped out. And I think that's something worth investigating. But I think that those are 2 separate incidences looking at how the app of Truecaller works. But I don't know why it would be rocket science for us to adopt the way even other developing countries what they have adopted. I mean, for instance, if you go to India today, it is common knowledge that you cannot just get a SIM. You have to register with your passport. And that's why we ask questions as to why it is foreigners in our own country have to get NINs. That's a national identification number for them to be able to link up with their own SIM, with their SIM card. It doesn't make any sense. If they already have a registration number from their countries, why won't that suffice for the NCC or for the Ministry of Communications? Why do they have to get the same number which identifies them as Nigerians? Or is there a special number for foreigners, people who recognize as aliens? Those are questions that I think need some answering by the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy. Let's hope that it doesn't remain rhetorical, that these questions will come up in places where, forums where they'll be having discussions on this matter and there'll be some response. Let's look at this one. NSAS protest, underwriters to pay 4.5 billion naira claim. So for those who had insurance, that's what we'll be seeing there. A number of other stories. Catholic Church suspends Father Mbaka for 30 days. Priest accuses church leadership of holding him hostage for 2 days. Or you might want to see details on page 3 of the airline and of the paper. And don't forgive me for saying airline. Look at what's at the bottom. That's what I just saw now. Federal government inches closer to new national airline. Picks preferred partner. Nigeria to save 117 million naira from maintenance plan. Well, we don't know if this one is going to be another airline on paper, but you might want to see details on page 4 of New Telegraph.
Well, yes, indeed. So there you go. Equally important, those issues about this SIM registration.
SIM linkage, yeah.
So how do we stop people who just come in, claim to be from a certain local government's area, and get registered? Because these days, lots of people are displaced as a result of the violence going on with herders, with displaced communities. So what if other people occupy those areas and then register? How do we assure that that doesn't happen?
It's always going to be an issue. There's something a number of people have said over and over again, that we haven't actually adequately deployed technology in contending with this, insecurity that we have on our hands. Yes, I mean, one can agree that the NIN-SIM thing is going to work some magic if eventually government is able to tidy that up. But we have so many porous borders, and we have a tough time already contending with people coming into the country. And what's also interesting, we're all blacks, for God's sake. How would you tell a Nigerian or a Cameroonian different from a Nigerian? It's really pretty easy. So, and how do someone comes to you and says, okay, I'm a Nigerian, how do you prove? How does the person prove that he is a Nigerian or not? And then the issue that Malcolm raised about foreigners also being able to get that one. Perhaps there is some dichotomy from real citizens of Nigeria and those who come from abroad. That might also, need some clarity as far as people are concerned, because it is important for people to understand what the issues really are. If, for instance, and you said it the other time, that it is one thing for Truecaller to recognize a number, it's another thing altogether for the system to have wiped it off at, NCC. Granted, but then let's just be clear. Let people know that these things really do happen. Again, let me reiterate what you said earlier, that there are people who hawk pre-registered SIMs. If that is true...
That is true.
Okay, you know that. I want to assume that the security officials also know that. Then it should be, that notice by the NCC should be straight.
Well, it's not just those people. For instance, it could even be me. I could have 2. And somebody comes up from another country and he's in a rush, and I just give him one and say, okay, look, I'm going to sell the other one to you at a good price. And I sell it. How is NCC going to know that I've done that?
This is a lot more complex than it sounds.
So you may ask yourself, besides, why are policemen not arresting people who are causing all this mayhem?
Exactly.
Is it sin that's going to, if they can't arrest people that, look, so many questions about some of these things, but we will be back in a moment. Join us again. All right, welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, we're going to be focusing on circumstances surrounding, well, they're all linked actually. So we're going to look at the economy, we'll look at the impact of certain policies and how they are affecting where we are or what's playing themselves out today. So we've got Roman Osehale, who is a business survey analyst this morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today. Well, clearly, a lot of those surveys and figures that we've seen, either from the MBS, the World Poverty Clock, several data, they're warnings of sorts to us all in terms of what we need to do, where we are at the moment, perhaps to guide government policies. But you have equally delved into some of these items in terms of understanding the challenges and then perhaps propose solutions. So from your perspective, what are the highlights of what you've seen?
Thank you for having me, first of all. We all know that it's a very challenging time for our economy and also the social aspect in Nigeria. And we know that the pandemic also dealt a serious and huge blow on the social economic balance of the country. But there is something that we all need to see, and which is very worrisome, and that is the present situation of things economically. And I want to state this categorically, that we're not going to be looking at either any of the administration, but it's like a historical thing that has been happening, and then we can all reach our conclusions. Now, if they'll put up the slides so that we can start. If you look at, they have the slides? Slide 1. From the year, sorry, slide 2. From the year 2000, when the world started ringing the bell on climate change, and they said, we're going to be tilting away from fossil fuel and going into renewable energy. Most of the economies of the world had started repositioning themselves to be able to face the challenges that are to come. But I think in our own case, we sat down, we were so comfortable because at some point oil was still selling at a very good price. We were still churning out large quantities. And the whole scenario now took us like on a surprise. Now, what is worrisome to me, if you look at the graph, Nigeria's total export to the United States in 2019 was 2.82 billion, with mineral, fuel, oil, and distillation products accounted for 2.73 billion. That is 96.8%. Now, if you look at the graph from 1995, you find out that between 2006 and 2012 or 13, we still had it very good. But our exports to these countries have continued to dwindle. And as they dwindled over time, it started, affecting our revenue. And as revenue is affected, we all know the implication of that. Now, what I did here was to look at some of our biggest trading partners and look at what constitutes our exports to those countries and what are the future implications. So if we're looking at a product that the West is phasing out and it still constitutes over 90% of our export, then we have a huge problem and also a huge challenge ahead of us.
Well, that's interesting. But if you don't mind me just punctuating you a little bit.
Yeah.
I know that, some of these slides, just as you have said, talk to some of our biggest, trade partners, US, UK, and a number of countries in Europe. But, since you want to take a cursory look across the Nigeria historically, across different kinds of administrations, question that comes to my mind is, it's one thing to have policies. It's another thing altogether for that policy to be run by people who understand the need the need for succession of each of those policies. So, because you know very well that we have had a good number of national development plans over the years, from as far back as, independence and all of that. So if that is the challenge that we have on our hands, and we are still contending with this now, what it tells me is that it's not a problem of policy, it's the problem of implementation. So how do we ensure that whatever analysis we have come up with now and the conclusions that we draw are really going to go beyond television?
Okay, very good question. So, you see, it's not only a Nigerian problem. As we go on, we will see it's an African problem. Africa has never sat down to do value added. Africa has always been like a mineral resource economy. I want to ask you, just look back. Is there any product you mine or you grow in Africa that you add value to from beginning to the end, that you create a value chain? None. From cocoa that comes back as chocolate, from gold that comes back as wristwatches, your chains, your bangles and stuff, from diamonds that come back as jewelries. There is none. So it's not just it's majorly a policy issue, but you see, I think it's more of a foresight, right? And as we go on, we will see the impact of what the Industrial Revolution did and how the Industrial Revolution actually buried Africa. People talk about, the fourth Industrial Revolution is coming. It's been a hype, right? But is Nigeria or Africa ready for it? And I feel from research, right, that the fourth Industrial Revolution is coming to bury us. That's the truth. But you will see as we go ahead. Now, let's go to slide 2. I just want to establish the basis first, right? Okay. Let's go to slide 3, sorry, please. European Union. You see that in 2019, 25.7 billion mineral fuel, oil, distillation products accounted for 24.52 billion. That is 95.4%. This is the same Europe that is saying by 2035, we don't want fossil fuel cars on the road anymore, right? That is in 14 years' time. Now, the US, the president brought out a policy that by 2030, they want to cut down on carbon emission by 52% by 2030. So all those things, those figures, policymakers are supposed to have sat down, right from the late 90s to early 2000s and say, look, this is what is coming. How do we start to reposition the economy? How do we start to generate revenue from other sources so that we are not caught unawares? Next slide, please. You see the United Kingdom, 1.16 billion export. Mineral fuel, oil, and distillation products accounted for 1.14 billion, 98.3. Next slide, please. Germany, 1.16 billion. Mineral fuel, oil, and distillation products, 879.49 million, 75.8. Next slide, please. France is 99.4%. Next slide. China, 1.67 billion. Mineral fuel accounted for 1.54 billion. That is 92.2%. Next slide, please. Canada, 99.6. This is the same product that the world is facing now. So why and where did we go wrong? That is what we're going to find out today. Next slide, please. India, 8.26 billion. Mineral fuel, oil, and distillation products accounted for 8.16 billion. That's 98.8%. Now, when you look at the imports from this country, right, it's the reverse. Now, as I said earlier, it's not just a Nigerian problem. It's also an African problem. They take all this, our produce, right? They go add value to it and then bring it back. So most of what we import from these countries are finished products, right? Now, next slide, please. Brazil, 87.1%. Now, Go to the next slide. Good. Now, this will be our topic of discussion. Now, you see, total export of Singapore in 2019 was 645 billion. Sub-Saharan Africa, 428.2 billion. Sub-Saharan Africa is made up of 46 countries. About 23 million square kilometers. 1.1 billion people. But total export was just 428.2 billion. Why? We'll find out. Now, Singapore, on the other hand, Singapore is not as big as Lekki Peninsula. Do you know that? Singapore is 728.3 square kilometers. 5.7 million people. But look at the productivity per capita. We are not being productive. And it is affecting us economically.
In what way, pardon me, in what way would you say the pattern of government has affected the productivity of Singapore as opposed to Sub-Saharan Africa?
Good. See, there are 4 things that propel industrialization. There are 4 critical factors to industrialization. 1, you have innovation. 2, you have government policies. 3, you have availability of resource demand. 4, you have industrial infrastructures. Now, if you look at those 4 things, Africa really, apart from the availability of resource demand, under innovation, you have innovation is propelled by research and development. Research and development is driven by education. Education is propelled by funding. You understand? Now, when you look at it, Africa and Nigeria, in fact, Nigeria invests the least in education as a percentage of GDP in the whole of Africa, if you know that. Now, so on the innovation side, we lost out. We really invest in research and development. Second, when you look at government policies, right, there are supposed to be policies in place that will help and grow industries. That we are not doing properly. And then third, availability of resource demand. Under availability of resource demand, you have financial resources, you have human capital resources, and then you have the raw materials or mineral resources, right? Now, under materials and mineral resources, Africa has abundance of that. But do we have enough financial resources, and do we have the capacity of human resources? Those are the questions we need to answer. And then industrial infrastructures. If you look at the industrial infrastructures across Africa, which are efficiency drivers, do we invest in those things? When you look at the most industrialized nations, you look at countries like Singapore, for instance, that is just 5.7 million people, exporting $645.6 billion worth of finished goods and services, not raw materials. Nigeria, of the $69.93 billion worth of goods and services exported in 2019, the mineral fuels, oil and distillation products accounted for over 90% of that. So we are just a non-productive nation. But we also need to go back into history to find out how we became a non-productive nation.
In other words, have we been previously productive?
Yes, at some point we were productive, right? But what nailed the coffin is part of what we're also going to look at. Okay. And to be able to understand that, we will go back to the history of the Industrial Revolution. Now, you see, the West are strategists. They know what they're doing. They know where they are going. In the next 100 or 200 years, the West already has a grand master plan on where they're going. But how that plan affects us is what we need to understand, and the strategies of the Western industrialization and how it came to bury the African economy.
What's the difference between Nigeria and other oil-producing countries who have larger exports than us?
Well, when you look at it, first of all, you look at countries like Dubai. When you go to most of the indexes, right? Now, one of the things I also need to explain to you, right, is when you look at all the indexes, right, you look at the Global Innovation Index. The first 30 countries are the most industrialized countries in the world. You go to Global Competitiveness Index, you find these same countries there. When you go to that's under innovation. When you go to research and development, these countries invest the highest as a percentage of GDP in research and development in the world. Then when you go to Human Capital Development Index, you find these same countries. It's not by coincidence. You go to government policies, you go to ease of doing business, go to the first 40 countries. We'll get to that chart. You find these same countries. You go to Global Infrastructure Index, you find these same countries, first 30 to first 40 countries. Why? See, you see all those things are all interlinked, right? Once one is missing, industrialization becomes impossible to achieve because innovation has to be there for you to be able to industrialize. And for you to innovate, you must invest in research. You must be carrying out a whole lot of research and development. For you to carry out a whole research and development, you must invest heavily in education, right? And then the ease of doing business must be there. Back to your question now. These countries, when they get money from oil, right, they invest in the 4 critical success factors of industrialization. And that's why, despite they have oil, right, they are also trying to industrialize. You look at countries like Dubai, right? You look at countries like Saudi Arabia, which is an oil-dependent economy. But go to Saudi Arabia and look at the infrastructures. And those are the things that the Western economies, right, will look at before coming into your economy. That, look, do they have these things in place? Because those things are efficiency drivers in the economy.
So what about Venezuela? Didn't they invest in some of those other indices, and where did they get it wrong?
Venezuela did not particularly invest in all those indices, right? If you look at innovation, what comes out of Venezuela? Only oil. Is there anything that you can lay hands to and say, this is produced in Venezuela? None. See, for you to be rich as a nation, you must learn to add value to something. If you cannot add value, either services or products, you must learn to add value. Tell me one thing that you can take from this country that you will find industries adding value to it, as in value chain, and then we put it in the market and say, this is made in Nigeria. You won't find any.
Why did you start from 1995?
No, because that's where I got the data from. Okay. 1995 for which of the...
Most of them were 1995.
Yes,
that's
where the data started from. But there's a reason for that, so that we will understand as we go on. It's just
okay, because I'm just wondering, because before that time, we've always had challenges investing in education.
It started from 1981. We had our peak. We reached about 5% of GDP in education. By 1986, I said this some time ago, that the guy that came in 1986 was the one that turned education around and reduced education funding to less than 1%, I think 0.76%. By 1992, it was 0.76% of our total GDP, right? And for some reason, it has stayed like that ever since. It doesn't exist.
From your findings, if you found any reason for it, what was the reason for that?
I basically don't know. You have to ask the government why they decided to reduce education expenditure to less than 1% of your total GDP.
But as at the time we had the industries,
yes,
the 80s, maybe 1 or 2 years, early 90s, did we really invest that much in education, and do we export any of those things?
You find out. See, this thing is very technical, but you must learn how to piece the figures, events, and happenings together. You understand? And then when you lay them over history, if you're able to convert those figures to those those data to economic indices and look over history, what has been happening, then you'll be able to reach a logical conclusion on what is happening. But even our economy, right, despite the fact that we are now all dependent on oil, right, you will now come to understand the role of the Western world and how the Industrial Revolution buried Africa and particularly Nigeria. So let's go back. Let's go to the next slide, please.
That's what you're talking about, understanding the role.
Yes. So we need to understand the role of the Industrial Revolutions and the strategy of the developed economy. Now, if you understand basically the roles which your competitors play in business, or those who are ahead of you, right, you'll be able to understand or know what to do and policies to put in place to be able to reduce the risk and also maybe gain a larger chunk of the market. But right now, I'll tell you the truth, the Western world is about 200 or 300 years ahead. And we will not be able to catch up. But we can reduce the risk. Now, next slide, please. So we're going to go back to pre-industrial revolution so we can understand what is going on here. Now, before the first industrial revolution, it was the agrarian era, right? Where people mowed the fields with plow and mules, and then you had the cottage industry. Now, some guy came and designed the steam engine, and that was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So what did the steam engine do? It increased efficiency. That is mechanization, right? Now, machines started being able to produce things rather than using manual hands. Now, when that happened, let's go to the next slide, please.
That's it.
Okay. Now, when that happened, right, there were 4 critical success factors to the first industrial revolution. And they were innovation. These things are not listed anywhere. But when you study these revolutions and you look at the numbers, you find these 4 things that will completely and continuously repeat themselves. Innovation. What was the innovation of that period? It was the steam engine. Government policy. Now, the first industrial revolution happened in Britain. Now, immediately the steam engine came in, production increased, right? Efficiency, that means efficiency increased. One of the key words I want you to always look out for here is efficiency. Efficiency increased. And when efficiency increased, what happens is productivity increases, and then you cut down on wastage of time and resources and probably materials. And what that eventually leads you to is increase in profit. You understand? So when that happened, government jumped into action, brought out policies, and part of the policies they brought out was immigration policies. Because they needed more hands, they opened their borders to people, as in skilled labor, from outside Britain, majorly in Europe. And a lot of people came into Britain to work. Now, availability of resource demand, there had to be coal.
Just one moment.
Yeah.
You said government jumped in. Is that to say that the innovation was not government-led, was private sector-led?
It has always been a private sector-led. You understand? But you see, government in the Western world is not a businessman. They generate income from taxes. So when people come up with innovation, they know that if in economics they say innovation is what pushes every economy to a new potential. So when people come in with new innovation, the next thing government does, because they know that if this thing sells, it was going to push the economy to a new potential, right? And it's going to bring in revenue. The more revenue, the more taxes we generate. You understand? And we can meet our own obligation of being a government.
So what, they provide the enabling environment?
Yes, they provided the enabling environment, not just the enabling environment. They made sure that everything was in place for these innovations to succeed. Now, part of the government policies was immigration of skilled workers. Part of the government policies were also the availability of coal. They gave mining licenses to a lot of coal companies, to mine coal, because coal was the fuel of that period. And then government started building railway roads because they know that because of the massive output, right, there has to be haulage of goods. And they built railway, they built roads, they dredged the canals so that the sheep and boats can also move goods across England.
So
now,
there was a confluence of ideas between government and the private sector.
Exactly. That has always existed in the developed world. Now, so what that did was it boosted the economy, right? Now, that now led to the second industrial revolution. Let's go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Good. Now, the second industrial revolution, what happened? Somebody designed the combustion engine. Electricity came into place, and then mass production. Now, what I want you to also look at here is the critical success factors. Innovation of that period was electricity, combustion engine, and mass production, right? Now, electricity meant that companies could work 24/7. Excuse me. Companies could work 24/7, right? That means that output increased. There was communication. Somebody developed the telephone, right? Now, what now happened with combustion engine was that the combustion engine started phasing out coal. You understand? Combustion engine started phasing out coal. And then that was the birth of crude oil. Crude oil started being in high demand. Now, mass production was the major breakthrough for most companies. As mass production came in, I'll use Ford as an example, Ford Motors as an example.
Okay, pardon me. We need to go to break, but
Okay.
we'll come back and continue this in just a moment. Join us again. All right, welcome back. So you were going to use an example with Ford.
Yes. So now, we'll take mass production, for instance. And this, I said something, look out for efficiency. Now, there are three key strategies of the West: innovation, efficiency, and globalization. When you understand how these things interact, then you understand how our economy was buried. Now, in 1913, Ford rolled out the assembly plant, right? Now, before then, Ford was producing he assembled one car in 12 hours. But with the assembly plant, they were able to reduce that time to 1 hour, 33 minutes to assemble one car. So you can understand saving over 10 hours and what that is going to do to your profitability, right? Machines over time, right, were getting more efficient and getting smarter. And what they were doing was they're using machines to increase efficiency. Now, before that, in 1910, thereabout, a Ford Model T sold for over $800, right? But by 2017, by 1917, the Model T, the price had dropped to $360, over about 63% of what the price was in 1910. So imagine saving 63%, right, in production cost. How much will you use as a bargaining power to put other people out of business? Do you understand it, right? So as the efficiency increases, right, there's a wider profit margin that can be used to bargain and reduce your, to reduce your cost, right, selling price, bargain and get a wider share of the market. So what now happened after that was the third industrial. Let's go to the next slide. You see what now happened?
I think Mark wants to come in and ask a question just before we move on to the next slide. Mark?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we can't hear that right now. So
Can you hear me?
Okay,
Okay, we can hear you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, some of the things that he's been saying now, some people say that it's not particularly new. I mean, before now, we have been talking about innovation, Nigeria beyond oil. We even saw some states, use that particular tag. We've been talking about diversification for a while. It's been a slang that's been in our policy lingo for a while now. my own inquiry will be into, and I really hate to interrupt your flow, Dr. Segali. However, I'm very curious as to why you think so far the policies that we have are not working or they're failing. And because you said that this is not a peculiarly Nigerian problem, it's an African problem. Some people have said, oh, it's a deliberate policy by former colonial masters to ensure that you do not get out of where it is that you are. I do not know if you've seen any of these linkages as to where Nigeria currently is. We do know that some countries are struggling to get out of that. For instance, Ghana, which is now saying that no cocoa will leave its shores without value being added to it. So what do you think is causing the failures that we're currently experiencing with our diversification policies?
Okay, now, I'll take Ghana, for instance, right? Let me quickly answer that question. Now, you're saying you will not sell cocoa to me because you want me to bring my manufacturing plants to your country. Now, there are four, I said earlier, there are four critical success factors to industrialization. And the Western world had always invested in those things. Those things are efficiency drivers. Now, you do not invest in innovation. Your government policies are not top-notch. You do not invest in industrial infrastructures. Those things reduce cost of production. So if I am producing in Switzerland and I have those things, all those factors available, do you understand? They may reduce my cost of production to maybe $1 or $2 per bar of chocolate. And I can sell at $5 to $6 or $7, right? But you're trying to force me to come into a market where those things do not exist. And then I now have to start making provisions for those things. What eventually happens is it will increase my cost, maybe to $4 to $5, right, per bar of chocolate. How do I get competitive? This is what needs to be done. See, all this going around and inviting people to come and invest, don't invite anybody. China, what they did, they put all their industrial infrastructures in place, and then they cleaned up their house. The people came. The same thing in Dubai. When the Sheikh was building Dubai, he was building all the infrastructures and putting things in place. And people were questioning him, who are the people that are going to use this thing? He said one keyword, he said, they will come. Once you put the efficiency drivers in place, the Western world will come. They will come. Look at Twitter, for instance. Twitter went to Ghana, and people were arguing. And I laughed, and I said, they don't understand what is behind it. In 2017, the World Bank conducted a survey and said, okay, what do multinational CEOs look at before going into emerging economies? And what did they come up with? The first on the list was political stability and security, right? The second on the list that they voted for most was political stability and security. Second was law and regulatory environment. And then third was size of market, right? Now, when you now look at the four critical success factors to industrialization, go look at all the indexes. When you look at Global Innovation Index, Ghana is ahead of us. You look at percentage of research and development, funds for research and development as a percentage of GDP. Ghana invests more than us. When you look at the Global Human Capital Development Index, Ghana is ahead of us. You look at the ease of doing business, Ghana is ahead of us. You look at the index on global infrastructure, Ghana is ahead of us. Multinational CEOs are not stupid. When it comes to the part where they have to put down money, they look at all those indexes. When you clean up your house, you don't have to invite the visitors. They will come because the efficiency drivers are already there. So back to your question, Maokwe, when you look at over time, the policies might be there, but when you look at the critical success factors to industrialization, we do not invest in them. And that is what the Western world looks at. If we need to diversify, we need to start investing in the four critical success factors that drive industrialization. So I want to quickly run through this.
You know, you've talked about how Singapore is about the size of Lekki Peninsula, and how, you know, they're very productive per capita, so to speak. We have had innovations whereby, or ideas whereby we have set up hubs where we think that, if we set up a hub, industrialization hubs or export hubs, that, we could attract that sort of investment, or we could focus on creating the sort of infrastructure that investors will be looking for. And then when you also go down to a micro level, you've seen that some states are more active than others. Do you think that this, when we look at the general average for the country, because I imagine that at the end of the day, when we're talking about ease of doing business, we're talking about a number of other factors when it comes to infrastructure and, GDP and what have you. We're looking at it as a country, as a whole. And oftentimes, if all the parts are not doing as well as, some other parts are doing, then it will drag the national average down. But do you think that we could focus on certain areas where we think that we're doing well, especially certain parts in the country that we have been able to make this investment? Is it possible to highlight those figures and wonder whether or not we could actually attract investors to those areas?
I would answer your question, but I need to run to the next phase of the analysis. That will help you understand the question you are asking. And it's very critical because of time, right? Now, when you look at the third industrial revolution, right, it was about computer IT automation. The 4 critical success factors were also present: innovation, government policies, availability of resource demand, and industrial infrastructure. Now, this is where the West got very smart, and they knocked us off the table. Next slide. Innovation, efficiency, and globalization. Good. Now, this is what I want you to look at. The third industrial revolution brought about, the first phase of the third industrial revolution was the mainframe computer. In 1960, just 10 years after the third industrial revolution started, the combined global world economy was 1.369 trillion. By 1990, it had increased to 22.627 trillion, right? Now, this was the BAT, where they were using the mainframe computer. So companies interacted with one another. But the interesting thing is this. By the first 30 years, the world economy increased by about 20.6 trillion. The next 29 years to 2019, GDP increased to 87.7 trillion. Why? This is what people do not understand. See, the next phase of the third industrial revolution was the use of personal computers and IT. So what that did was that every company, the birth of www.com. So every company became an international company. Remember, they already innovated. The machines had now driven efficiency, right? And with the increase in efficiency came the lowering of what? Production cost. Do you understand? Now, the next 30 years, from 1990 to 2019, right, global economy increased by 65 trillion. 65 trillion. Now, but who were the major beneficiaries of it? It was the countries that invested in those industrial, critical success factors to industrialization. Now, only 10 countries, these countries listed below, account for 65%. That is 57 trillion of that 87 trillion.
Forgive me for putting it.
Yes.
All of these figures, ultimately it's about human beings. You've talked about companies, you've talked about countries,
yes.
The nations playing their roles. You've talked about the companies playing, critical roles. But you haven't quite, talked about the another critical factor, if I can use that term, which is the people, the manpower that are used, by the countries and the companies to champion.
Yeah, that comes under availability of resource demand, what I talked about earlier. Now, if you look at the second industrial revolution, right, immediately there was mass production. The US passed a law. They allowed, I think, over 11 years, if I'm right, about 25 million immigrants came into the country. because there was so much to produce. They started expanding the roads, they were building railways, right? But back to the slide. Now, this is where they buried the economy. Now, between 1990 and 2019 is 29 years, right? When did all our industries die? They started dying from 1998, right? Now, from that 1990, what you would see is that you and I could now sit down, surf the internet, buy our goods from anywhere in the world, and ship them in. So the next phase of what they did was globalization, right? Now, we have the efficiency, we have the innovation. They cannot compete with our prices anymore. So, and then they launched the internet for you and I and gave us personal computers, right? So you could source for their goods. Amazon came up, Alibaba, and every other companies. So you could now buy. Now, go to the next slide. 10 countries. But when you now use the EU as an economy, right? And then you add Singapore, you add Hong Kong, and then Taiwan. Those countries account for 71% of the total GDP of the world. Why? Now, you see the biggest gainers. This is from 1990 to 2019. You see, the blue is where their export was in 1990, while the red is where their export is in 2019. Now, between that same 1990 and 2019 was when all our companies started dying off because we couldn't compete anymore. And it brings me back to the second industrial revolution. What did the government do? Immediately the West started industrializing. They made sure, as somebody in the book, The Bad Samaritan, he said the West was built on three things: protectionism, tariffs, and subsidies. The US passed a law then to make sure that foreign goods were not going to be able to compete with the locally made goods. You understand? To be able to build up their industries. The critical thing...
That was a law.
Yeah, that was a law.
Not a policy.
It was. I think it was a law or policy. I can't remember, but it was something that was put down under the policy, right? To make sure that foreign goods don't come in and destroy the potentials of locally made goods. And this is this. This is what I want to say. Without industrialization, we're not going anywhere. That's the truth. These are three key questions I ask people. Is there any developed country that is not industrialized? You will not find any. Is there any industrialized country that does not have a military might? You will not find any. Sorry, okay. Please. And then, if you now come to the undeveloped countries or developing countries, will you find any one of them that is industrialized? None. Will you find any one of them that has military might? None. So industrialization is the key factor to getting us out of where we are. Now,
okay, let's finish the slide so we can put in those questions. No.
Okay.
Just wanted to finish the slide.
So you see the trend, right? The biggest gainers are those that have invested in the 4 critical success factors. The truth is this: we cannot compete anymore. That's the truth. The 4th industrial revolution is going to take efficiency to an unprecedented level. If Ford could reduce the cost of a Model T from mass production from over $800 to $360, right, in 7 years. Now, just imagine what the 4th industrial revolution is going to do when machines start to do things. The cost of production is going to fall drastically. There's something I want us to see before your question. Next slide, please. Now, this is our currency depreciation. Now, see what happened between 1990 and 2020. So,
just a moment. What informed the stability between 1985 and 1995?
Honestly, I don't know. We need to go into those policies, right? To be very honest with you. But, you see, one of the things I also noticed, I got a personal computer for the first time, I think year 2000, that I bought my laptop. You understand? That I bought a laptop for myself for the first time. But if you look at the 90s, not many people had personal computers. Not many people had email addresses. Not many people could surf the net. We all started surfing the net, creating email addresses, a lot of people from year 2000. And then we started buying things from abroad and shipping them in. And with the imports increasing, right, our currency started depreciating. Your currency is the strength of productivity. The strength of your currency is from productivity. If you're not productive, and one of the things I also want you to see here, see, in 1999, right, the Nigerian naira officially sold for 21 naira, the dollar sold for 21 naira 89 kobo officially. By 2010, it was selling at about 150 naira. But guess what? Between 1999 and 2010, we had an average growth in the economy of 7.11%. The economy was growing, but yet the currency was depreciating. Why? Because we were not producing anything.
So why then is Africa blaming the West? Because they innovated.
Yeah, exactly. I used to have that. Good question. I used to have that notion too. I used to think that way. But these people have been investing in the four critical success factors of industrialization. You benefit from what you invest in. We have not been investing in those things. So it is coming back to haunt us. But the thing is this, we need to understand how things work. Once you're able to understand how things work, then you are able to mitigate or reduce the risk around it. If we do not industrialize, we cannot even catch up with innovation. I'll show you something. See, this is a Samsung. This is Apple, right? These guys are ever innovating. They are ever innovating. So when you go to the Global Competitiveness Index, you will find them. Because the more you innovate, the more you become competitive.
Just as you said earlier, these things are private sector led.
Yes.
And government supports. And the reason I asked the question about, that stability is that between 1983 and 1999, we had a military rule.
Yes.
Look at what happened to us in the Fourth Republic alone. Look at the quantum of depreciation of the naira within this Fourth Republic.
Yes.
Now, what that is, the question that is leading to for me is all across Africa, just as you have said, it's as if every country that had a military rule and then got into, a civilian rule, we seem to be having challenges because most of these countries that you've talked about that are revolutionized and all, they've had democracy consistent for a very, 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 very long time.
Yes.
How do we get there?
You see, the thing is this: you cannot benefit from what you did not invest in. That is the truth. You cannot benefit from what you did. We did not invest in all these things. And the critical thing is this: we need to industrialize. If we industrialize, we are able, even if we cannot meet up with the innovation of the West, right?
We can leapfrog certain things.
Yes, we can leapfrog certain things. Look, cocoa and chocolate is a $136 billion industry. Africa exports 75% of all cocoa seeds worldwide. Netherlands, that does not grow cocoa. Cocoa is a tropical plant. It's not a temperate plant. Processes 13% of all cocoa seeds worldwide into chocolate. So of that 136 billion, Africa's share is about 5 billion or even less. Now, you sell something for 5 billion. By the time the West adds value to it, they bring it back. Maybe about $10 to $12 billion worth of chocolate ends up back in Africa. So what you sold for 5 billion, you're having to buy back for 10 to 12 billion.
Okay,
you see the deficits that are being created. And that's how it is being created across every product. Gold, diamond, you name it.
Okay, as we wind down now, two things. If we solve our electricity challenge, and then after is in place, how can those two things help?
There's something I want to say, right? If you solve your electricity problem, efficiency increases. And then the next thing is what?
After.
So,
Africa,
okay, yes. Well, it might help, but the thing is this. My opinion about the free trade zone is it might be more harmful to us when you don't have a product that you sell. You understand? Before you open your economies up. And the West protected their economies for a long time. They got it right before they opened it up. The same model China used, right? But this is what I want to say. You see, skilled immigration did not start today. It started way back in the first industrial revolution. Now, what stops us from poaching white people too? Now, see, in 2012, when the World Bank carried out a study on the wealth of nations, they found out that the greatest of wealth were the human capital, right? Now, in the OECD countries, 75% on average is human, their total wealth, 75% on average is human capital. Britain had 89% when they broke it down of their total wealth as human capital. US, 75%. Japan had over 90%, right? That means that when they are taking you and I, they are stealing the greater of our wealth, right? But this is the thing. Why can't we open our borders to foreigners too? Tell them, give them citizenship. The West knows that they cannot do it alone, even with all their technology. Do you understand? Why can't we follow the same model? Availability of resource demand, that's the human capital asset. You understand? Canada will advertise every year that they need X amount of people. They know the industries that are lacking. If we want to industrialize, and which we have to, other than that, we are going down. We need to open our borders to immigration. Let us advertise it, bring in these people, and then give them the citizenship too, so that they can be part of us.
All the more reason why we need to get that big leadership recruitment process right, because it feeds into other things, getting the right policies and ensuring that right things are done. But thank you very much indeed for coming on. Roman Osaala is a business survey analyst. We will be back in a moment. Don't go away. You're busy enjoying that.
Oh, but guys, it looks too real, man.
Too real?
Absolutely. Look at it.
Well, we'll have a hyper-realism artist here with us.
Oh.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you.
He's taken aback by that. He's just,
Yeah,
you get that kind of reaction all the time, don't you?
A lot.
Wow.
I mean, I'm just blown. First time I saw it, it was. Sorry.
The background, first of all, wait a minute. How did you learn this?
Actually, I learned some element of art in Yabatek. So I developed it after graduation.
Nice. But you definitely had some inspiration because you also said previously, I think on your website, that you had some lecturers that influenced you and all of that. But the influence wouldn't have come if you didn't have a kind of background.
Yeah, the influence wouldn't have come by that because those lecturers gave us the limelight that we needed to follow. Because they are in the forefront, they see what is happening outside, and we copied from what they kind of paint. Said that was when in school. But when you leave school, you try to like expand your own, find your own roots, get different ideas from different sources you can get, and merge it together to become something.
He talked about passion. How important is that? I mean, is this something you always wanted to do?
Yes, I've already wanted to be an artist right from
the age of 3. Yeah. So I try to nurture it gradually.
What gave you the interest at that time, if you can remember?
Yeah, I could remember while I was a kid, I used to draw. I used to draw with, look at the newspapers, magazines. I copied from those newspapers, and I enjoyed being in my own solitude time. So then I developed that interest more as I grew up.
What kind of interest, well, how much support did you get from home, from mom, from dad, from family?
My own case is quite different from so many other artists because, you know, most parents want their kids to be a doctor, lawyers, engineer, and the rest, bankers, and the rest. But my parents, my grandparent was a printer, and my mom was a printer. And my dad wasn't a printer, he was a businessman. So my mom usually gets this cut-off printing papers from the printing press. So when she realized that I normally draw on my normal mathematics. So he make a jotter, we call it jotter then. He made those jotters for me. Immediately I come home, I would see one jotter already pinned down with stapler for me. So I use those things to draw. So I developed.
Sorry, Jemilene. The time you were born and were growing up was a time when Nigeria had what they call the austerity measures. Yes. Why? Because poverty was kind of increasing at the time and government was doing all kinds of things. So people...
I guess it didn't affect the mind.
Sincerely, I mean, not even of his mind, but of his parents to have even supported that kind of thing. Did you any kind of pushback at all from anyone?
No, I didn't get any pushback from my both parents because I told you already earlier on that my grandparent was a printer. My grandparent was a printer and he lectured a few years in Yaba College of Technology. And then in Yaba Tech, they usually have arts department in the same school of art and printing. So he realized that there are some students that are making it through arts. And he knew this is the path this guy is going to. And he tried to nurture me towards that part that I couldn't relate to any other.
So the moral of that story is, I mean, parents who try to force their words towards
killing
a certain
the children.
area. So they need to identify, look, what is it that this child wants to do? What is he or she passionate about?
Absolutely.
So you can encourage them on.
That's the message.
But those works, looking at them, how do you draw them? I mean, is it something that the person sits in front of you, like this one, for instance, or it's something you have in your mind, then you just recreate, you draw it up?
Okay. While I was, immediately I left Yaba Tech, there are so many departments, there are so many courses you read about art, and you try to choose the one that you love most. But I try to choose the one that is most challenging. Because I knew at the end of the day, you want to be at the power of those who are outside this African country. You want to become just like trying to become a footballer. You want to earn your skill to become a Messi, you become Ronaldo, but you are in Africa. There are so many role models of footballers that are in Nigeria, but it depends on the limit they can go. But I understand that. So I try to know that I need to learn so many things immediately I left school. So I do all sorts of research on my own before I try to put my work in the market, try to start doing exhibition and the rest.
Okay, so you have a wide array of choices in arts. And you chose hyperrealism.
Yeah.
I think maybe let me take my perspective of Chamberlain's question.
Okay.
Tell us about hyperrealism. What does it mean, and how did it even come to be in the first place?
Yeah, hyperrealism has been in existence for like 50 years ago, but none of the Nigerian masters have been able to coin that name for themselves, because there are so many American artists, German artists, Dennis, and Dennis, Dennis, so many of them like that are too close, and so many of those hyperrealism artists that are majorly photorealism. But in the sense that you will look at their own kind of style, they try to like work towards getting a perfection of higher resolution that the eye can even, not the layman can even think of. They can get to such details. So they pursue that kind of perfectionism. So, and I see that in the environment where I was born, there hasn't been any master that has reached that, probably one or two, but they kind of stopped in some areas because they stopped in the area of photorealism, because none of them could achieve what the water effect could create, another level.
Which is what you're doing here.
Which is what I'm doing here. So when I realized that none of them could get to that extent, so I tried to like challenge myself that I'll get to this extent.
It made me even ask a question. That water thing that you raised, Chamberlain, sorry, made me ask, why water? It was most of your arts. Look at this one and a good number of others that have come previously. They have the water characteristics. Is it that?
Those kind of water scene comes accidentally to me and deliberate to me in instance. Accidentally, because while I was trying to get some research, I tried to go to my 12, take some references, try to paint some market scene, and I stumbled on a woman trying to wet a carrot. And when she was trying to wet the carrot, I could realize that when I took the shot, I could realize that I can paint the man's face, but I can't paint the waters on her hand and the water dropping. So I kept the reference. I was so scared. I kept the reference for like 3 years or 4 years. I couldn't paint it. But I was so fascinated by the emotions of that old woman. But I said, if I paint this, will I cut off the hand? So that fear took me like 3 or 4 years to win out. So deliberate in the sense that when I was a kid, I tried to like play with children a lot. When immediately I left Yaba Tech, I played with children a lot. So I used to see them taking baths. And I used to say how the beauty of water is on the skin. But because most people don't understand that when the water touches your body, it gives another illusions that you can't, the beauty itself can never be seen by just an ordinary lame eye. It's going to be seen by somebody that is very patient, that can see.
And speaking about patience, how long does it take you to put out one of these works?
It takes like 1.5 months.
Whoa. 1 month?
Yes.
And
some have taken me 2 months.
To paint?
To paint.
Do you, okay, you said you take pictures. Are you saying that every single one of these are pictures that you took previously?
Yes, every single one are pictures I took.
So including that girl, that the one that I think you probably identify the one that is like the most prominent, the first one that played before we came on.
I took all the pictures by myself.
While the water was being poured on
the water was being poured on. Because I realized it's a challenge for me. And I haven't seen any artist in Nigeria that have achieved that height. And I realized there's nothing that will be more fascinating about art than to be challenging yourself to grow to another level.
How did the lecturers see this? Because is it back in the curriculum now? I mean,
it's almost
this is not the one we
saw. A lot of them are really happy that I've been able to coin a style, which a lot of students are trying to emulate. A lot of students, even those who are in universities now, are trying to like emulate that style. And even some are even been writing a lot of thesis about it, writing projects about it in university. And sooner or later, maybe it will be part of curriculum.
Okay, let me ask you, what does your job, your calling, what does it say? What does it do? Okay, this is you at work, obviously.
Yeah.
What's the message you're trying to communicate to the world?
First, my job entails trying to talk about the society, the way we live, and the way we allowed ourselves to forget the beauty and existence of everything in our environment. And I try to build that in my art, and I try to bring it out to the audience as well. That not everything has to be in rigid. We have to have the flow of life. We have to have the tenacity to adapt to the society we are and enjoy life at every point.
And what kind of feedback do you get from people as a result of the communication of your art?
Yeah, a lot of people tell me that it reminds them of so many activities they must have done while as a kid. So many people have called me to, this looks like me. This looks like my daughter.
Yeah, success has many fathers.
So this looks like my uncle. This looks like my young baby. They try to so many things because I've been able to bring out something. Everybody take their children to the water, take their bath, but never would everybody think of, let me take my children while taking a bath. They don't see the beauty. Immediately they shower, they rub towel and forget about it. But, you know, as an artist, you look at in depth of everything. Where we are now, there are some kind of elements that if an artist grab it, you turn it to your magic into you.
Mark can see now sometimes so that, I think she's got a question anyways. Mark.
You know, I think your work is amazing. It's so beautiful to behold. And I think that what is even more remarkable is when you do the work that has to do with water. I mean, I don't think many people have seen water painted in the manner that you have been able to project this. And I can imagine that the reaction, the feedback that you would have received would have made it worth your while. I do not know if it will be, if it has been financially rewarding so far. I mean, it's all up to you to say just how much that has made it worth your while in terms of the financial gain that you have received. That's one question I'd like you to speak to quickly, if you may. But then there's also the question of the competition that this could have with photography. I'm sure that you've seen the rise of photography in Nigeria as well. Some people will say, if we can take a picture of it and enlarge it and, you know, focus on the tiny little details through the lens of a camera, why do we need to paint this?
Okay, let's start from the first question. You know, I personally don't do art. I've started doing painting before I can think of probably the painting is going to make money. So I enjoy the process. And that is, you yourself, you are in this studio now, you enjoyed the communication, the process, the everything about telecommunication and mass communication. We enjoy everything. Likewise, an artist, if you want to be a successful artist, you have to enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the feelings before you think of the money. Most of my lecturers used to say, learn before you earn. So when you enjoy the process of learning, the money flows as if you did a money rituals. So I don't see anything that will hinder the economic gain as an artist, because right now, if somebody could paint a work for like 500 years ago and the work is selling for like $450 million now, so why?
So, how much does yours sell for? One.
I said if somebody, I'm not saying mine, if somebody could paint a work 500 years ago, which is Leonardo da Vinci I'm referring to. So if the work could be sold for $450 million now, presently, you could see that it's just like Nigerian is not that awakened more about the importance of having an art in the environment. At least it should be in the law that Nigerians should have, even if any structure has to be built in this country, they should have 1% of the amount they use in building that structure to fund arts, to appreciate arts. That will go a long way in helping the art industry.
Wow. You haven't answered the other question.
The other question is, she's saying
Zero.
yeah.
No. Is it? Why should people paint if they can use
the other
high
question,
quality lens?
is because if you look at the hyperrealism, no matter how the hyperrealism, you will see every brush strokes which really deterred it from
Like this.
photograph. If you zoom into it, you will see every brush strokes, and that brush strokes could be millions of brush strokes, and that brush strokes makes it more artistic.
It seems like this girl, use this girl a lot.
Well, we'll come back and take some more comments as well. Don't go away. All right, so what kind of reactions are you getting now, internationally first?
I've been getting a lot of attention for over 4 years now that I've been covered by CNN and BBC. So it's just coming over again for some people that haven't seen the works of mine before. And a lot of people have been communicating and are having a good response from so many people outside the country.
But as it is now, I mean, the way you came about this, is it something that you think, or what part of this can be taught? Because it wasn't how you learned it.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is for an individual to have the zeal to become an artist and then now have the patience to start drawing. When you understand, drawing is like how to reinforce an iron in a building. When you learn how to reinforce an iron in the building, no matter how you prepare the cement, when the iron is very strong and tied to the floor, the building will never collapse. And that is the basics of being an artist.
I know you must have noticed that there are a few other much younger, hyperrealism arts.
Yeah.
If you would offer counsel, what would it be for you?
Yeah, I think what I would do is for them to see how they developed from the normal drawing, cartoonist, and how to catch them from that point and tell them what to do and what not to do and direct them to the right progression. Because most people in this world now, a lot of contemporary people want to lie because what is happening that makes money is like people said you have to be contemporary, you have to do sort of rubbish, you have to do sort of things, style, to make I communicate your idea to the audience. But if you don't know what to do, your idea cannot come from nowhere. If you cannot think of something, if you cannot create something, you can't just say you have an idea now. I can see if it's something like an contemporary artist now, I can say this studio now, I buy all this machine in the studio and the camera and everything, and I say this is an art piece. It's an idea. But to a layman, it's not an art because you've not been able to create or draw anything in this environment. But the foundation it's the drawing. If you can master the drawing, you can be able to do anything, either sculpture, either painting, either textile, either graphics. You can be able to do all sorts of things that encompasses in of arts.
Wow. So definitely, I mean, everywhere you look in this country, there's always
Talents.
very, very fantastic talents all over, not even just the country these days, all over the world, as a matter of fact. But this is indeed very, very good. I'm sure there are lots of young people who get across to you. They want mentorship.
Yes.
And you must have been giving them a lot of advice.
I've given so many, numerous young people that will come all the way from UK for holiday. They'll bring their kids to me, and I try to impact some little knowledge into them, because most people think realism, hyperrealism style is something I can just dabble into and just style. It doesn't work like that.
So what is next for you?
I'm working on showcasing some of my works in US and in UK again, and in some part of Europe too. And also, I need to also learn so many things, because art is so vast these days. There are so many things that are coming up as an artist, so you need to get 1 or 3 informations to add to your own ideas that will make it more, you can't just sit down in one place and thinking everything is going to be fine in 5 years' time.
Wow. Fantastic. This is very, very lovely indeed, and beautiful work. Olumide Oreshegun is a hyperrealism artist. Thank you very much indeed. And hey,
thank you.
All the best.
Thank
well
you.
done. Well, let's take a look at briefly some of the comments that you've sent to us from what you've seen or heard today. We've got Comrade Diary saying we have many talented Nigerians doing great work, like Olumide, all across the world. With the right set of political leaders, Nigerians can competitively compete globally, and this is why we must do everything as citizens to ensure we bring on board the right leaders.
Absolutely. And Dr. Umavi says, painting drops of water with such intensity is amazing. Getting the colors, the shades, and balance right is a different level of human ingenuity. Well done to this hyper-realist.
Okay, well, we've got this one from Mr. Omar, says, we have the human capital to move Nigeria forward. If only the technocrats will be allowed in to fix things. I am still basking in the euphoria of listening to Mr. Mokeji's speech yesterday. Good to hear that from a northerner. Our situation calls for urgent action. So, yeah. Okay, well, we thank the rest of you. Badon Joshua, Ayodeji, Francis Iredike, Ademola, and then Adewale Deborah, Ademola Lalade. Thank you all for those comments. We appreciate all of you. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful weekend.
Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a relaxing time on the show. I thought that was soothing. Have a lovely weekend. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.